The Nürburgring Nordschleife wasn't built to be sensible, it wasn't built to be fun, it wasn't even built for racing in the traditional "we value human survival" sense. No, the Nordschleife was Germany's way of saying, let's build something incredibly stupid, incredibly massive and incredibly dangerous and then pretend that's normal. In the 1920s, the country was crawling out of the economic crater left by World War I. Jobs were scarce, morale was worse, and the reputation of Germany was basically one long apology letter. So someone, we don't know who, probably a man with absolutely no fear of lawsuits, said, let's build a giant racetrack through the mountains. And everyone else just nodded like this was a perfectly rational suggestion. Construction began in 1925. Thousands of workers marched into the Eifel Mountains armed with pickaxes, shovels, dynamite, and what I can only assume was an extremely spotty health insurance plan. They carved out a 20-kilometer ribbon of tarmac by hand, moving mountains of earth while the forest watched silently, probably thinking, good luck, idiots. And when they finished, they looked at their creation and said, yeah, perfect. No runoff, no safety fences, no soft walls, nothing. Just trees, cliffs, and fate. When it opened in 1927, journalists called it the Green Hell. The locals gave it another nickname, Berlin on wheels, overbuilt, oversized, overwhelming, and a little bit unhinged. From the start, it wasn't just a racetrack. It was a dare, a challenge, a 154-corner survival exam no sane person would ever willingly sign up for, which is exactly why racing drivers immediately fell in love with it. They looked at this towering monster and went, yes, that'll do nicely. By 1951, Formula One showed up and learned instantly that the Nordschleife wasn't a track, it was a personality test. Other circuits were glamorous. Monaco had yachts, Monza had speed, Silverstone had charming weather patterns that tried to drown the audience every 10 minutes. But the Nordschleife? It had cliffs, blind corners, elevation changes so extreme they gave cars vertigo, and weather so chaotic you could start a lap in sunshine, enter fog halfway through, hit rain on the far side, and return to the pits covered in hailstones wondering what continent you had just crossed. Safety in the 1950s was, of course, a suggestion. Seatbelts? Not required. Marshals? Rare. Medical response? You had a friend with a cigarette and hope. Crash barriers. Some corners had wooden fences that existed mostly for decoration. A fast lap around the Nordschleife was less about bravery and more about negotiating with the universe. And yet drivers loved it. They absolutely worshipped it. Because winning here meant something you couldn't get anywhere else. It meant you had the reflexes of a cat and the risk assessment skills of a toaster. The track didn't just measure speed, it measured nerve. Every lap was a gamble, every race a survival lottery. If you finished, you were celebrated. If you won, you became a legend. And if you crashed, well, you became part of the Nürburgring's increasingly alarming statistics. Between the early 50s and the late 60s, the track claimed drivers with terrifying regularity. The biggest names in motorsport, Collins, Marimon, Von Trips, all paid the price. Spectators too. The Nordschleife was equal opportunity chaos, and still, Formula One kept returning, telling itself, it's fine, we'll be fine, everyone relax, while quietly updating the life insurance forms before every race weekend. There are racetracks with memorable corners, and then there is the Nordschleife, which has so many that half the drivers forgot the names and just remembered where they nearly died. Calling them corners is generous. They're traps, ambushes, geological pranks. Take Flugplatz, a harmless-sounding name that means airfield. Which is fitting, because this is where your car genuinely tries to take off. You hit a crest, the suspension unloads, and suddenly you're looking at the sky instead of the track. Drivers didn't take the corner, they survived the launching. If you landed straight, congratulations. If you didn't, the forest welcomed you personally. Then there's Schwedenkreuz, a corner so fast and so blind that drivers essentially had to make peace with their gods before turning in. No runoff, no margin, no forgiveness. Mess it up, and you met Armco at the exact speed your parents told you not to run in the house. Bergwerk is the Nordschleife's evil genius moment, a tightening right-hander that looks innocent but exists specifically to betray you. You enter fast, you exit confused, terrified, or missing several car parts. It's where Niki Lauda's world changed in 1976, and the track made sure no one ever forgot. And then, the most iconic of all, the carousel, a giant concrete bowl that looks like someone dropped a Formula One car into a construction site. Drivers clung to the inside like a washing machine on the spin cycle, rattling bones, suspension, and occasionally their will to live. Get the line wrong, bounce out of the concrete, and that was your weekend sorted. And keep in mind, that's 4 corners out of 154, some fast, some deceptive, some slippery, some hidden behind trees like jump scare enemies in a horror game. The Nordschleife didn't let you relax. If you weren't scared at the start of the lap, it would fix that for you by the end. From the 50s to the 70s, the Nordschleife became the playground, or battleground, for the greatest drivers ever to touch a steering wheel. This wasn't the era of data analysis and perfect setups. This was the era of, does the car start? Perfect, off you go then. Juan Manuel Fangio's 1957 German Grand Prix drive is still considered the greatest in Formula One history. At 46 years old, an age where most drivers start enjoying gardening and joint pain, Fangio hunted down 2 Ferraris after a disastrous pit stop left him almost a minute behind. He broke the lap record again and again until the track probably wanted to apply for sick leave. When he won, he said he would never drive like that again. Nobody blamed him. Then there was Jim Clark, the smoothest man ever to violate the laws of physics. He didn't fight the Nordschleife, he caressed it. His laps looked effortless, elegant, like he had somehow bribed the forest into giving him a free pass. But even Clark knew the place demanded respect. Every race here felt like threading a needle at 250 km/h while the needle moved. Jackie Stewart, meanwhile, saw the circuit for what it really was, a medieval torture device with sponsorship banners. He called it ridiculous. He called it lethal. Finally, someone had the courage to say the obvious. The Nordschleife wasn't a test of skill, it was a test of survival. Every year, a driver died somewhere in motorsport, and far too often it happened here. Stewart called for guardrails, medical support, helicopters. You know, basic things. Critics called him soft, the track called him right, but no amount of warnings stopped the inevitable. The Nordschleife kept taking its toll, waiting for the day when everything finally snapped. Niki Lauda was one of the toughest, smartest, most ruthlessly efficient drivers ever to live. If he said something was unsafe, you listened. And in 1976, before the German Grand Prix, he looked at the Nordschleife, the rain, the conditions and said, "Let's not do this." The other drivers said, "We'll be fine." They were not fine. Lauda switched to slicks early as the track dried faster than expected. Lap 2 pushing hard. At Bergwerk, the corner that eats mistakes, the rear stepped out. The Ferrari hit the embankment. The fuel tank exploded. What followed was one of the most horrifying scenes in motorsport history. No marshals, no rapid response, no fire truck close enough to matter. Just drivers. Harold Ertl, Guy Edwards, Brett Lunger, Arturo Mazzario, throwing themselves into fire with nothing but instinct and bravery. They pulled Lauda out with their bare hands. His helmet had melted. His lungs were scorched. His chances were near zero. And then, because Niki Lauda was built differently, he woke up and told the priest giving him last rites to get lost. 42 days later, he got back into a Formula One car at Monza. Still bleeding, still bandaged, still Niki Lauda. His crash didn't just scar him, it burned the illusion that Formula One could keep pretending the Nordschleife was manageable. After the Lauda crash, Formula One didn't argue, it didn't debate, it didn't negotiate, it just left, quietly, almost awkwardly, like someone backing out of a party they suddenly realized was a terrible idea. Sponsors panicked, teams panicked, even Bernie Ecclestone threw his hands up and said, "All right, maybe this is a bit much." Nobody wanted their logo associated with fireballs in forests. And so, in 1977, the German Grand Prix moved to Hockenheim, flatter, safer, and notably lacking 154 ways to die. The Nordschleife wasn't abandoned in the traditional sense. It simply became too mythical, too dangerous, too uncontainable for modern Formula One. The sport evolved. Safety improved dramatically. Drivers wanted challenges, not death traps. And F1 never returned to the old Nordschleife again. Most abandoned racetracks crumble, they rot, they fade into history. The Nordschleife did the opposite. It reinvented itself. The 24 hours of Nürburgring turned the place into a rolling circus of chaos. GT3 cars, amateurs, pros, traffic jams, fog banks, deer, explosions, and occasionally someone in a Renault Twingo setting personal bests. Then came tourist laps. The bold, the brave, and the deeply confused taking their rental cars onto the most unforgiving asphalt on Earth. It became a pilgrimage site, a motorsport temple where anyone could test themselves against the same corners that terrified the greatest drivers in history. Sim racers kept it alive too. Every racing game has the Nordschleife. Every newcomer loads it up, does one lap, spins 3 times, and realizes they need therapy. That's the magic. You can't master it, you can only survive it. The Nordschleife isn't dead. It was never abandoned. It's eternal. Too big to kill, too iconic to replace, too dangerous to modernize. Formula One outgrew it, but the world never forgot. It remains the ultimate question every driver secretly asks. Could I handle the Nordschleife? Most hope they never have to find out. Because here's the truth. It wasn't a racetrack, it was a beast, and beasts don't retire, they wait.